Hi, this is Graphically Alex coming at you with all things fat related. If that's something that interests you, please subscribe. I'd love to have you. Today, we are going to go over this very important question, which I think it is actually interesting, but I feel like the fat acceptance movement and the body positivity movement, they're having to reckon with needing to serve both masters at once. So, what do I mean by that? It means that a lot of us in the anti-FA space, we understand that fat acceptance is incredibly corporate backed. I don't know how else to say it, but fast food companies, anything food related, clothing stores, even things like Dove, for example, they all have these body positivity campaigns that are designed to make money. And they do make money off of it. They'll sell you the shame and then sell you the solution, right? They also will sell you the food that will make you fat in the first place, right? So this is interesting because I think that the corporate backing of a lot of the rhetoric of fat acceptance, Ozempic is a very corporate thing. And I find it to be really interesting. It's very much, big pharma solutions and these kinds of things. So I feel that a lot of fat activist types in media, like The Atlantic, for example, they have to sort of serve two masters. So I think what we're going to look at in this article is just how are they reconciling these two things in the media. I know fat activists, like more on the grassroots level, like on TikTok and that kind of stuff, they're all very, very anti-Ozempic. I understand that, but what I want to look at is sort of mainstream narrative, and especially the corporate narrative of how do we reconcile these two things that do not work. So let's look at this article. It's going to be kind of weird. I just read the very beginning of it where it almost sounds like a commercial for Ozempic, okay? So let's go ahead and look at it. Could Ozempic derail the body positivity movement? The medical miracle, so that sounds like it's promoting it, right? Wouldn't you say so? Medical miracle. That's promotion, right? The medical miracle could reverse our progress on accepting bodies of all sizes, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and take my picture off. Like I said, I don't want it to glitch or anything, but we will go ahead and read it together. So 1 second. Okay. So this came out on September 28th, 2023. I'm trying to find some new blood, some things that are a little bit more recent. The medical story about Ozempic is straightforward and satisfying. A drug designed to treat diabetes had a game-changing application for weight loss. So I just want people to keep in mind, like, this is experimental, right? So it has not been tested for weight loss long term. Again, I don't shame anybody that uses it. It's not, especially if you're very, very big. I'm a very right to try type of person. So if you're going to die of obesity, it's more important for you to get the weight off, even if it involves an experimental treatment. That's how I view it, but it was tested to treat diabetes. It's not tested for weight loss. So you are the test subject if you are doing it for weight loss, okay? That you are entering into this kind of study, so to speak. It hasn't really been tested. So, again, a little bit of misinformation here. But it has plenty of caveats. You have to take it indefinitely. It doesn't work for everyone. It has side effects. Okay. It's at the moment unbelievably expensive and rarely covered by insurance. True. But it works. It works for some. Okay? You still have to do diet and exercise, so it's pretty similar. What people tend to use it for is a reduction in hunger, or they call it food noise. But I've had the same reduction in hunger and food noise from doing a pro-thyroid way of eating. So, for me, a lot of my hunger, especially in a physical sense, it came from hypothyroidism. which is very common in obese people, especially super morbidly obese people. So when I dealt with the actual root causes of my hormonal issues, I wasn't as hungry. I'm okay. I don't really have food noise. I don't think about food all the time anymore. It took a while though. It took time to get here, but I'm not on Ozempic. You know what I'm saying? So we need to be realistic about Ozempic. It's not like the one-off solution of all, and it isn't like that. And I don't think most people need it. That's the wind, by the way, if you can hear that. So anyways, but it works. People can lose a significant percentage of their body weight and keep it off safely. In the history of spotty and dubious weight loss drugs, this one is a genuine medical breakthrough. Okay. That's up for debate, in my opinion. I think it can help certain people in certain circumstances with hunger, which is important. It's not a cure-all. You still have to diet and exercise. So, again. But the cultural story is more complicated. In the last few years, the culture has finally started making a little bit of progress with fat shaming. Well, not according to Fat Acceptance TikTok, so I guess you'll have to check with them, right? For example, Weight Watchers downplayed the word weight in its name and started talking more about health and wellness and developing a positive mindset. Okay. Still about losing weight, though. Even if they just, 1984 erased the word, it doesn't matter. It's still about losing weight. Ad campaigns started using models of all shapes and sizes. Yes, it was a trend, and the trend has passed. A lot of women find these models beautiful and are finding their own bodies beautiful too. That's debatable. So I'm kind of having a moment with this article where I feel like I can debate almost everything that this person's saying. So let me try to chill out for a sec. But, okay. This progress is new and fragile. And the introduction of a miracle weight loss drug, again, is it a commercial or is it critical of it, right? Isn't it weird how they're kind of dancing on this line? Could easily upset all of that. In this episode of Radio Atlantic, science writer Olga Kazan and I imagine it's 20 years from now. Insurance covers Ozempic. It's affordable. It's pretty widely available. In this future, have we become a lot less judgmental about obesity? Or does the decision to have whatever body you want come to be seen as a problem? So, okay, I'm sorry. I'm not going to be able to read this uncritically. We already have that world. We can already lose weight. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm going to have to pop on here. We can already lose weight. It's already possible for the vast majority of people. And again, even somebody like me who I struggled with severe BED, severe hypothyroidism caused by the foods and habits and everything of what I ate when I was in my BED. If even I'm able to lose weight, it's pretty surefire. We know that it is about calories. We know it's about having an appropriate deficit. And that's ultimately what it is. You don't need Ozempic to do that. You just don't. So I think we need to cut that crap pretty much right out the gate. So I think that this article, it's trying to gaslight us into believing that we live in a world where people can't choose their body size. That's not true. It's not an easy choice. It's not a one-off choice. But you do not have to be fat today, forever, of all time. You did not have to be fat. It is not genetic. It isn't. It just isn't. So I'm going to go ahead and pop back off and let's continue. Here's the full transcription of the episode. Hannah. There's a story about the new drug Ozempic that people like to tell. It's a story of a once in a generation medical breakthrough of how a drug to treat diabetes became a game-changing new drug for weight loss. Yes, it's a commercial. Now, there are plenty of caveats. You have to take it indefinitely. It doesn't work for everyone. There are side effects. It's, at the moment, unbelievably expensive. But but it works. People can lose a significant percentage of their body weight and keep it off, and they can do it safely. The medical story is straightforward and celebratory and satisfying. But there's another story, the cultural story, which is way more complicated. In the last few years, are they just repeating it again? Hold on, let me not reread this whole thing. Ooh, the wind. Okay. This whole thing feels new and it's delicate. And now here comes this miracle weight loss drug that could upset all of that. And the more I try and imagine a future where Ozempic is commonly available, the more I wonder how this medical miracle commercial and our recent progress around body image live together, and if they can live together. Well, all I can say is corporate interests will try their hardest to make it live together. And there are some issues with Ozempic, like Ozempic face, for example. So I guess there is still some body image progress to be made. So as I was thinking about all that, the first person I wanted to talk to was Olga Kazan. She's a rare writer who can see where medicine and culture clash. She's reported on Ozempic for The Atlantic. Hi, Olga. Hi, Hannah. So I'm interested to have the cultural conversation, but first, some basics. What is Ozempic? Ozempic is a brand name for a drug called semaglutide, which basically just mimics the digestive hormone that we all have, which slows digestion. And it also tells you that you're full. And what makes it so revolutionary? Why do people say, oh, this is a game changer? Like, I'm serious, you guys. Am I reading a commercial or what? Isn't this interesting? It's very strange, isn't it? Why do people say, oh, this is a game changer? The idea of like a magic pill for weight loss has been with us for a while, but they've always been not effective or dangerous. This is really the first one where the side effects, usually like nausea and diarrhea and things like that, people feel like they can tolerate for this benefit of weight loss, and they're really effective. Commercial. People lose a substantial percentage of their body weight, and they're able to keep it off as long as they keep taking it. And we really haven't had those two magic ingredients so far in the weight loss space. Two magic ingredients, meaning one, people lose weight, and two, they keep it off. That's right. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people have lost weight on diets, and I'm not trying to minimize that, but it's pretty widely known that with dieting, you only lose a small percentage of your body weight, maybe something like 5% or so. Okay, let's go ahead, and I'm getting triggered by this. I have currently lost almost 15% of my body weight. Actually, 15% of my body fat. I have lost 80 pounds of fat doing my ProThyroid protocol combined with calorie counting. That's 80 pounds of solid fat. I've kept it off. You know, I've been doing this process since summer of 2022. There are seasonal factors that are difficult. It's hard to lose weight in the winter, but winter ends, as we know. The world keeps turning, right? Winter ends, and then I continue to lose. And I've kept it off. So this whole thing of you lose like 5%, that's more like Ozempic results. That's what Ozempic is like. You know, even the commercial, it says you lose like maybe 10 pounds or something. They're acting like this drug can make you lose 200 pounds overnight. That is not at all what it's like. That is frustrating. Very frustrating. Let's continue. Okay. And a lot of people end up gaining that back. Yes, and when people quit Ozempic, they also end up gaining the weight back, and sometimes drastically more, depending on if they actually dieted or had proper nutrition while they were taking it. Oh, this article is making me mad. I'm sorry, you guys. Okay. And for a lot of obese people, they actually find that their metabolism changes, so their body kind of fights the weight loss. So they tend to hold on to this excess weight, cough, hypothyroidism, cough, cough, cough. And it just becomes more and more difficult the further you get into obesity. That's true, because you become more and more hypo. Of course, weight loss surgery is effective, but this is something that it's not a major procedure. You don't have to go under. You don't have to eat these tiny meals for the rest of your life. You do have to inject it for now, but many people would prefer that. So do you see how weirdly this person is not actually accurately describing the drug? You do have to take it for the rest of your life. You do have to eat less. The whole point of taking it is that you're less hungry. So it has nothing to do with you don't eat less. Yes, you do. Isn't it odd? Very weird. I mean, is this just straight up lies? Like, I'm having a hard time reading this. I mean, really, you describe it. It does kind of sound too good to be true. It's because it is. I understand it is true. No, it isn't. But it is interesting that they suddenly swept in this thing that clears out all the problems that people have been struggling with for so long. Yeah, and I mean, I don't want to minimize the fact that there are side effects and a lot of people can't tolerate them. And according to this one obesity doctor that I talked to, they don't work for everyone. Like, I think there's always some percentage of the population that's not going to respond. And of course, the big, huge caveat with these is that they are super duper expensive if your insurance doesn't cover them. So in a sense, they're a magic pill, but only if you can afford it. Is it reasonable to assume that sometime in the near future, it will be more widely accessible? I have asked this question of every expert I talk to, like, when will it be covered by insurance? Generally, things tend to move from not covered to covered, so I do think it's possible to expect that soon these will become covered by insurance. I guess I'm just trying to imagine if there's a future where these are widely available and the way we talk about weight loss kind of changes in the culture. Okay, so once again, we don't need Ozempic for the way we talk about weight loss to change in the culture. In fact, I want it to change. I don't like a lot of how it's talked about. It's not talked about reasonably a lot of the time. And it gives fat acceptance people fodder and the ability to sway people because a lot of diet culture stuff is crazy and really irritating and nonsensical and unsustainable, and it's constantly pushed. And we always have it pushed. You know, there's always these trends that are pushed and pushed and pushed. And for me, my big one that I really, really dove into was keto. And keto was a disaster. I don't view keto as a lifestyle. I view it as a fast. I view it as something that you can do temporarily. I know I have people that do keto in my chat and stuff. I'm not trying to hurt your feelings. But the fact that if your feelings get hurt, then it shows that there's truth to what I'm saying. I've done it. I did it deep. I did it hard. It really made my hypo worse. It made me a lot worse. Okay? So I don't say that just to piss people off. I say it as a warning. It's not good. I say the same thing about veganism. I say this about diets where you cut out entire food groups. I don't agree with it. And I never will. Because I've done them. They didn't work. I understand what it feels like to be vegan. You know, I've done vegan I think I did it for about 2 months. I felt horrible. And then I binged for like a year after because I was so, oh gosh, it made me so hungry. Oh my God. I never got full when I was vegan. It was like a never thing. And with keto, it was just so difficult, so arduous. I might make videos about those diets because I've done them and I just, I have my perspectives on them, but I try not to because I don't want to insult anybody or offend anybody, even though I shouldn't be offensive. If you disagree with me, that's fine. It's not like I'm coming after you as a person, but I still have to say what I have to say. Because in my opinion, knowing what I know, it's unethical for me to say anything different. But that being said, we don't need Ozempic for the conversation to change. That's not true. That's not true. Okay. Yeah, I mean, this is super sensitive and also hard to predict. And it's something that these weight loss companies that I've been talking to tiptoe around because their whole thing is helping people who want to lose weight. But there was this sort of period of time where expressing a desire to lose weight was not, how do I put this? Expressing a desire to lose weight was not cool. It was not cool. Yeah, I guess cool. Okay, well, that was only to certain, like, echo chambers that it wasn't. That never actually was a thing. So, just saying. But it was also just kind of frowned upon. Like, there was just this era, I want to say like 2017 to 2020, literally when I did veganism and keto. So, not true at all. This person is kind of up their own behind. Okay? Not true. But anyways, I'm sure there are so many of you guys that have done diets during 2017 to 2020. There are so many of you guys that lost weight during those years. Like, this is such BS. I'm sorry. Okay. Where it was just seen as gauche to be like, I'm on a diet. People stop dieting, maybe in certain circles on TikTok. I can't even say it's a left-wing thing because people on the left never stopped dieting either. Nobody stopped. Nobody. It was just this very specific group of very, very fat people on TikTok that stopped. And then whoever else that never started, basically. But it was never seen as gauche. Like, if you think of, like, you know, a conservative family, for example, where they're all fat, if somebody wanted to start a diet, it's not necessarily seen as gauche. You know, you'd have that same kind of family sabotage of any family, but it wasn't seen as, like, tacky to be on a diet. It was just, like, people would just be like, oh, gosh, are you actually going to stick to it this time? That's kind of the attitude people had, but it wasn't, like, unless if you were in this very specific subsect of TikTok, it was not seen as gauche, ever. Sorry that your freaking echo chamber did not exist, you know, or it wasn't real, or it was never actually accepted by most people. Anyways, that being said, I will say there are certain fat acceptance talking points that do break through, like weight is genetic. So that is a fat acceptance talking point that has become mainstream. So that there are certain things that broke through, but doing a diet, being gauche, that was never relevant. Okay. Anyways. You know, the CEO of Weight Watchers around that time was like, healthy is the new skinny. This is what I want to talk about. Let's back up. Sure. I want to start at the founding of Weight Watchers. Okay, laughs. 1963. Because it happened in Queens, and I grew up in Queens, and Queens has so few moments of glory. Back in the early Weight Watchers era, what was the talk or idea around weight loss? So Weight Watchers really started as America was still partly in this era of shame around being overweight. Was still? What does that mean? I don't know. I don't think you can, I've always said this, but you cannot stereotype America like you can other places. It's too big. There's too many people that disagree on everything. And it's so regional. So I think you could definitely make an argument like, well, people used to care about being fat in, you know, insert town or state. But you can't say America. There is no, like, one thought of weight in America that has never existed, ever. So that doesn't make any sense. But anyways, things kind of transitioned from being thin is morally good to being fat is shameful. You had these, like, support groups that held public weigh-ins, and they would force their members who hadn't lost weight to stand in what they called a pig line. So, oh my gosh. So according to a 1963 Life magazine story, during meetings, women would pin cardboard pigs on the non-losers, meaning people who didn't lose weight, and serenade each other with, "We are plump little pigs who ate too much fat, fat, fat." Oh my God, yeah. So this is what I'm talking about in terms of we can change the conversations around dieting and weight loss without Ozempic, right? Like, I agree that there needs to be shifts. I think there's always a push for huge radical diets where you cut out half of your calories or you cut out an entire food group overnight. One of the, obviously, one of the greatest anti-fat creators. I have been meaning to praise her lately, but she's been awesome lately. But Michelle McDaniel, she has been extremely fervent in promoting sustainable changes and caloric intake as key to weight loss, which has brought a lot of sanity to the conversation. And I really appreciate her outro where she's like, you can get muscles and abs or whatever to scare away the boys, but you don't need them to be healthy, kind of thing. It's like she has a more reasonable approach. And the fact that she's so popular and, one of the biggest anti-FA creators, that is really, 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 really good. Okay. Like, it makes me really, really happy because, again, she's changing the conversation. And guess what? We didn't need Ozempic for that, Just saying. And I want to change it too. And there's things that I want to add to it. And there's things that a lot of people, everybody wants to add stuff to the conversation. I think that's important because this is, at this point in America, at least, and it's growing across the world, obesity is becoming a universal issue. It's becoming something, in America, it basically is. You already know somebody, or you have a family member who is, or you yourself are obese, or you are starting to see it across the world. So this matters. Even in places like Japan, there are increasing rates of obesity, or like people are starting to gain weight there. Like, it's spreading, So we need to talk about it, and we need to have reasonable conversations about it. And I'm going to keep pushing for that. It's really important. Really, really, really important. Okay. Anyways. Oh my God. Yeah. Let me take this off. 1 second. Okay. And this was like a sisterly support group situation. This was a support group. Like, it's like truly deeply offensive. Wow. Okay. Wow. So we get to the 60s, and this is when this housewife named Jean Nidetch invites 6 friends to her house, and they talk about their weight struggles. She finds this to be really helpful to just like have this informal group where you can share your experiences. She eventually loses 72 pounds, and so she kind of establishes this idea of having a real support group, not a mean, shamey one, where people encourage each other and help each other to lose weight in this more supportive environment. Was the underlying idea there's still a kind of value or moral judgment around weight, so that even if it wasn't quite so mean, there was this idea that fat is ugly or bad or something? Like, what was the language in that era? Yeah, it was. I would say less mean, but definitely she was not like, I just want wellness or I'm happy with my body. She wanted to lose weight. Right. Oh my gosh, these people are in such an echo chamber. Let's break something down. Okay. Let's break something down for anybody who doesn't understand this. If you are obese, if you are fat, if you are overweight, it's perfectly normal to want to lose weight. Okay? I just want to put that out there. Okay? All right. And she would carry around a photo of her, like, former self when she was heavier. And she would be like, I pray that I never forget where I came from. Oof. Oh my gosh. I couldn't imagine not wanting to be super morbidly obese or something, Oh my gosh. Oof. How mean. I can't imagine not wanting to have breathing problems. Wow. I can't imagine not wanting to not be able to walk very well. Oh my gosh, I can't imagine not being able to wipe my own behind. on the toilet. Oh my gosh. Oof, oof, gosh. How could I not want those things? Oof, oof. Yeah, oof. Gosh, because it was like so bad to be overweight. Yeah. Okay, well, if it's great to be overweight, then you guys need to gain tons of weight. Okay, I want both of you guys to gain, both of you girls, girlies, I want you guys to gain as much weight as possible. That's my challenge to you. Pound it down, get all the food, eat everything, eat as much as you can and get as fat as you can, and then show how amazing it is. Because that's what I want you to do. Okay? Because if you don't, then you just hate fat people. Don't you know that? Okay, anyways. So definitely in this Weight Watchers era, people were still losing weight and they were not just like doing yoga and being body positive. So that's kind of where it all originated. Okay, so what happens next? So because dieting isn't very effective, citation needed, I think a lot of people got frustrated with this encouragement to diet and exercise, which you still have to do on Ozempic, you guys. Just letting you know. And I mean, there was a time when I was reporting a lot on obesity, and I would actually go to doctor's appointments with people, and the doctor would tell them to lose weight, and they would be like, I don't know how, or I can't. And they would be like, well, have you tried diet and exercise? Also, doctor, like, do you think I didn't think of that? Right, right. Oh my gosh. Ooh, these people are nuts. Like, it's a novel idea you just came up with. Yeah, I mean, there are certain things that take effort, you guys. Certain things, I don't think people think about this, but it takes just as much effort to gain weight as it does to lose weight. You have to spend a lot of money. You have to spend a lot of time eating and eating and eating. You have to do a lot of stuff to gain weight. It takes a lot of work and a lot of energy to gain that much weight, especially if you're getting to be like 300, 400, 500, 600 pounds. Like, that's a lot. Do you know how hard it is? Or like, think about how much effort it really is to eat 5,000 calories a day. That's a lot of effort. And yeah, to lose the weight, it takes a similar amount of effort. It takes discipline. It takes tracking. You have to count and stuff. You have to see what you're taking in. It takes all these things. But guess what it takes less of? I take a lot less time eating. I spend a lot less money on food. So it actually helps me survive during this economy where food is extremely expensive. I don't think I could ever eat as much as I used to, the way that it is now. I don't know how anybody's doing it. I mean, it saves me going into credit card debt over food. I guess I'll put it to you that way. Because I don't understand how people can just eat and eat and eat now. Jeez. But what I will say is, there are certain ways in which weight loss takes less effort than gaining weight or than maintaining a huge weight. And people don't think of it that way. They think about it very one-sidedly. So they think, well, indulging myself is easy. Not necessarily. What if you have to work hard for your money and you're spending all your money on food? Is that really easier? Not really. It isn't. Okay, let's continue. Yeah, it's like a little bit condescending. And so I think people kind of were like, I'm not going to put up with this anymore. And then the industry took a cue, I guess, from the general population. And so you had magazines who were like, we're going to stop using phrases like bikini body, lean cuisine. This was a weird one. Started offering a browser extension that actually blocks the word diet from your web pages. Yeah, which is really weird. So there was definitely some very bizarre corporate push for this movement, I guess, which is interesting. Which is weird because it's lean cuisine, right? It is kind of diety food. Yeah, and you really had body positivity take off, and the idea of a diet really just seemed kind of outdated. Cough, cough, to my echo chamber, cringe, side project on frickin' TikTok. Okay? Sorry, I had to add that little parenthetical for them. So if dieting fell out of fashion, to our side project, Cringe Fringe TikTok group, what new things sprung up? Yeah, so it's very interesting. Right around this time in 2018, Weight Watchers started calling itself WW, but at the same time, you still have people who want to lose weight. So you have things starting up like Noom, which is this weight loss app, and it does show you how to diet and how to eat foods that will keep you full longer and help you keep track of your food and count your calories and things like that. But it also took this psychological approach where it would tell you, like, there's no such thing as good and bad foods, and you should just move joyfully, and just because you mess up one day doesn't mean that your diet is ruined. So it does a lot of like therapy coaching alongside telling you that grapes are healthier than raisins. And I know a lot of people who lost weight on Noom, and it seems to be pretty effective. Yeah, I remember when I was first looking through Noom and being really surprised at how different the language was. You know, they talked a lot about health and wellness and body positivity, but it was really hard to tell if people were going to Noom just still, if people who were going to Noom just still had those same old anxieties about being thin. And if these companies sort of knew that and maybe were just coloring it in more acceptable language so people felt better using it. What it is that there became less of an issue or less of a focus in some regards, not completely, not for everybody, certainly not for me at the time, but for many people, there became this desire for a more health focused look at dieting and weight loss, less image focused. And it's because a lot more people became super morbidly obese and very, very, very obese. And the health issues were becoming clearer and clearer. And so a lot of people were looking for some kind of way to get out of it. Now, there is some social stigma and there is some social pressure to lose the weight, which again, they're saying that that didn't exist in 2018, but clearly it did, because why are people signing up for Noom? You know, especially if they weren't hugely huge. But I think overall, people were starting to recognize, not me, because I was late to the party, but a lot of people in 2018 were starting to realize that shaming around dieting wasn't actually helpful, which it never has been. If you look at The Biggest Loser, the vast majority of those people gain the weight back because shame is stress. And stress for somebody who's hypothyroid, for somebody who is super morbidly obese, it's not helpful metabolically. Because we're already in such a weak position, hormonally, physically, and health-wise, the added stress of being shamed, it doesn't help us. In the same way that fat shaming may help somebody who needs to lose like 30 pounds, who doesn't have severe hormonal issues or trauma, right? That's going to be a different situation. So for some people, it can work. But for very, very big people, it didn't work. And there was this sense of a divide forming within diet culture and within health conversations. And I'm definitely more so on the non-shaming side because of my experience with stress hormones, because of my experience with horrific, deadly metabolic issues and hypothyroidism and super morbid obesity. I understand that stressing somebody out in that state, in the state that I'm still currently in, even though, my gosh, I'm close to getting out of super morbid obesity. I'm very close, but I'm still there. I understand that stress is bad, so I don't ever push for it because I don't think it's good. I don't think it's helpful. I don't think it helps sustain you. It makes you hungrier. You know, it does all these things. You need to try to go easy. I've always said that on this channel, and I will continue to. So anyways, some people were ahead of me in that regard, and that's what was happening at the time. It wasn't about dieting being gauche. That's not true. Anyways, I think that's for everyone to draw their own conclusions. So I will say that, like, Weight Watchers, they stopped requiring their members to have a weight loss goal. They stopped doing the before and after photos that they were kind of very famous for. you pick goals when you sign up for Weight Watchers, and one of them was developing a positive mindset. Meetings started to be called workshops. I don't really know why that's better than meetings, but they did that. More professional, maybe, right? But they were still offering a point system and ways for people to lose weight. It was still a weight loss program. So I think they just picked up on this sentiment in the culture that dieting is sort of passe, and they were like, what can we do? We're a weight loss company that fits with this new sentiment that people have around dieting, but still fundamentally helps people lose weight. The issue with Weight Watchers is that it doesn't work. That's the problem. So I think maybe for some people, some very, very few people did Weight Watchers and it worked for them. But for most people, it didn't. And I'm one of those people. Weight Watchers was the first thing I ever tried. In fact, when I was in high school, I felt, based on my family and upbringing and everything, 'cause my mom and grandma, I lived with my mom and grandma, and they were both fat and I was fat. And in our household, weight loss equated to Weight Watchers in the 2000s, okay? Like, it was like completely not separated. And the thing is, you try it, it doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? Because it's complicated. The point system doesn't really make that much sense. The types of foods that they geared you towards make you hungrier. And ultimately, you just get very hungry on it. And so, they push you to have only lean stuff and, whole grains and things like that that are not very filling at all. They actually make you really hungry. And they are very anti-fat within a dieting program. They would say you can eat fat, but fat was always like drastically higher in points. So it geared people towards eating low fat or no fat in some situations, which again, I told you is a no-no. I don't agree with cutting out a macronutrient. I don't. Fat is a macronutrient. It's important, especially for satiety. And if you cannot be not hungry, then you're going to end up like my family, where we'd go weigh in for Weight Watchers and then go to a freaking Mexican restaurant and eat a bunch of chips and nachos and stuff and, enchiladas after, because you're hungry from the whole week. That's the reality for a lot of people, So I would say pretty emphatically, Weight Watchers struggled because it doesn't work. That's why. Okay. And there were periods that were a genuine opening up in the culture, like a change in models, like catalog models. It's called a trend. So it's a trend. Like catalog models, just general models. Like there was a broadening of types of bodies that you could see on screen or in magazines that everybody would agree could be called beautiful. Yet not everybody. There were always people that were critical of it. I remember. Always people who were critical. Always. Oh, totally. Yeah, I mean, you had like the Dove commercials. Those famously like included size 10 women, which was like revolutionary at the time. Chuckles. So yeah, there was a lot of positive stuff that came out of that time. Some of the shame around being fat thankfully went away. But there is this enduring fundamental problem, which is that obesity is associated with a lot of bad health effects, and doctors in particular were still working on that. Now you're separating the cultural issues from the medical issues being that obesity specifically, not overweightness, this isn't true by the way, overweight does count, but obesity specifically is associated with certain health outcomes. So that's not true. It's not good to be overweight either. I don't care what people say. We might need to do a video on this because they have actually released new data in regards to the BMI, and no, it's not true. So anyways, it's better to have a normal BMI. Okay, anyways, don't want to start that debate right now. Gosh. Okay. Obesity was and continues to be a big problem. It can cause diabetes, liver disease, heart disease, cancer, sleep apnea. Okay, at least we're starting somewhere, right? It can shorten your lifespan, and your quality of life can go down. I will add that. I mean, it continued throughout this time of body positivity to be something that doctors considered to be a huge health risk. I understand. So you can think of it as a symptom that might lead to other symptoms, but there isn't any moral value attached to it. Yeah, I would say obesity is a symptom of a disease. So that's what we say on this channel. Obesity is a symptom of a disease, and that disease could be mental or physical. So it could be something like PCOS, hypothyroidism, which is more physical, or it can be something like BED or food addiction, which, yes, they are two different things. I might need to make a video clarifying the differences because they are two different things, but to shorten it, to make it short and sweet, food addiction is about the taste of the food, the actual food itself. BED is about eating. So you will eat even something that's gross. I will never forget this one time when I was in high school and I was binging and I was eating whole wheat bread with sugar-free syrup in a bowl. That is BED, and it was gross, but it didn't matter because I just needed to be eating. So that's the difference. So BED is not an addiction. It's a coping mechanism for anxiety and trauma, typically childhood trauma. Food addiction is about the food itself, the taste, all that kind of stuff. That's different. So I'm not going to erase anybody's experience with that, but I didn't have that. I had BED, which is awful and deadly, but that's a different struggle, right? You know, somebody like your Michelle McDaniel, she always talks about her food addiction, which is valid. You know what I'm saying? So it is valid. It's just, it's just not everybody is the same, you know? So anyways, let's continue. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that's where things got really twisted. It's that obesity didn't acquire a moral valence because I think a lot of people wrongly saw it as something that you could completely control with what you ate. So you can. So that isn't wrong. That is true. It's absolutely true. So this article is totally based on lies. Okay, I just want you guys to see that. So I want you to see what they're saying here. And if you just swapped out your Big Mac for carrot sticks, you wouldn't be obese anymore. Well, yeah, if you reduce your calories, you won't be obese anymore. That's the facts. It's just a matter of if you can sustain it or not, which means that you have to think about what kinds of foods you're eating. Because if you're eating chips for every meal, you're going to feel like you're starving if you cut your calories. You're going to feel absolutely ravenous. Okay? And if you just thought, let me see, but realistically, that's not what a lot of obese people are doing. They're eating right and exercising, but they can't lose weight anyways. So again, we will clarify, eating right is not always what's going on. Sometimes it's cutting out entire food groups. It's drastically reducing calories. When it comes to exercising, sometimes it's overtraining or it's not being active at all. So either one of those things will be a problem. You want more of a middling ground. I walk a lot. I walk hours a day because I walk in my work. So I would suggest, if you can, having a more physical job can help because it forces you to be active if it's not overly stressful and if you're not too ill. Okay, so that's the two things. So when we talk about morbid obesity and supermorbid obesity, we always need to consider that people are at different levels of fitness and health, and some people are very, very ill. Because on this channel, we acknowledge that morbid obesity is morbid, that supermorbid obesity is deadly, is imminently deadly, okay? So we actually do consider that. But again, you gotta remain calm, and you just gotta turn the ship around, and you're gonna be okay. Okay? But anyways. All right, let's continue. So in some ways, it's better to think of obesity in a medical way because it's a medical condition. So actually, Alan Roberts, he's talked about this, that the way the corporate narrative is going to shift is they're going to start talking about obesity as a medical issue, not a behavioral issue, which it is a behavioral issue. There are some medical situations, like I've talked a lot about hypothyroidism, PCOS, like those are two very, very big examples of medical issues within obesity. But guess what? You can treat them. Guess what? There's a thyroid protocol. There's something you can do to improve thyroid health. There are steps you can take. It's not a death sentence. And you have to take care of yourself. If you have these hormonal issues, you need treatment. You need to do something about it. It's not just going to go away. It's not just going to get better spontaneously. But as far as if you're eating a lot, then you have to cut how much you're eating. Then you're eating too much. If you're eating 5,000 calories a day, you're not going to be able to lose weight if you're eating 5,000 calories a day. Like, let's keep it real, okay? Anyways. What are the American numbers on obesity and how have they changed over all of these decades that we've been talking about? It went from 13% of Americans were obese in the 60s to 42% are obese now. So that is a really big medical problem. Yes, and seed oil consumption has skyrocketed, but I will just add that. And we somehow have to muddle through and find a balance between treating obesity and helping people lose weight if they want to without shaming people who are obese or making them feel fat or lazy or somehow less than just because they're obese. Yeah, so this is the corporate dilemma I think that we're seeing here. It's interesting. I do think that this era of semaglutide puts a new focus on the fact that if you're, severely overweight or obese, there's something you can do about that. Commercial. When we come back, what happens when these medical imperatives and cultural shifts collide? Imagine it's 20 years from now. Insurance covers Ozempic. It's affordable. It's pretty widely available, not just to treat diabetes and obesity. We don't live there yet, but you can tell it's coming because of what happened this spring with Weight Watchers. These same companies that are sort of like, there's no good and bad foods and you haven't messed up, you just had a slip up and wellness is more important than weight and healthy is the new skinny, are now saying, do you want some Ozempic? Yeah, so both Noom and Weight Watchers have launched these services where you can be paired with a doctor. And if you qualify, which means if you're obese or you have diabetes or other conditions, you can be prescribed these weight loss drugs. Wow, this is very interesting. So they're really, really, really pushing this. Okay, so I remember, you guys, this should be a last resort. This shouldn't be something that you just jump into. I don't think so. That's my opinion. You can disagree with me, that's fine, but this is my opinion. I don't think you should go into this lightly. I don't think so. I don't know that we know the long-term effects, especially of being on this for years and years. I think it's ridiculous if you needed to lose 30 pounds to go on Ozempic. I just think it's ridiculous. And it doesn't cover the cost of them, of course, which is substantial. So you could sort of do your Noom and your psychological behavior change, but also you would be injecting yourself with Ozempic. And to you, what was the significance of that announcement? Well, it's kind of an awkward pivot, right? Because you've been saying all you have to do is follow our guidelines. You just have to count your points and keep going to meetings and it'll work. Or you just have to follow Noom and, log your meals and it'll work. So my issue with these things is that there is bad foods, okay? And people don't like it when you say that. That's another one of those fat acceptance talking points that has permeated the mainstream world. But the bad foods, they are seed oils. People don't want to hear that. I don't care. I have to just speak facts. It is what it is. You can eat them and eat them and eat them and tell me how you feel. Tell me if you gain weight. Try it out. Try to just not have them and see how you feel. That's about it. Okay? Other than that, I don't think there are truly bad foods. I think there are just certain foods that are not helpful for super morbidly obese people. Like, I don't think nuts are helpful. I don't think fatty fish is particularly helpful. Just like the fat profile of these things, they're not super helpful. Like, you're going to be hungrier if you eat them in a lot of cases. But it's not true for everybody. Again, you can't look at somebody and know if they're super hypo, right? You have to see how you feel, so a lot of it is self-directed, and you have to determine what you can handle personally and what you can sustain. And that's the truth. And it will look a little different for everybody. That's how it is, But what I can say universally is seed oils are bad for you. They are a bad food, and they are in a lot of foods, and they are bad. Okay? And you may not want to hear it, and you may say, oh no, it's fine. What do you mean? Oh my gosh, it's heart healthy. It's this, it's that. But it's not. Like I said, you can try it, experiment, eat a bunch of them, increase it dramatically, and see how you feel. That's what I would say. Cut them out completely and see how you feel. Try it out. Anyways. So I think that's where these diets struggle, because they don't tell you to avoid that. So you'll just keep eating like McDonald's and just count your points or count your calories with McDonald's, and then you're starving, or you feel really tired, or you feel really depressed, or you feel all these things. But most of the time when you're super morbidly obese, you are just plain naked starving. When you're in a caloric deficit and eating McDonald's, you feel like the force of hunger of 1,000 suns. And that's a feeling that thin people never have felt, I don't think. That fire of 1,000 suns hunger of eating crap food and being in a caloric deficit while you're eating crap food. It's wild. Okay, so anyways. Well, but if you want a little something extra, here it is. And I think anytime there's an admission that the old approach has failed, and here's actually what's better, it's a little surprising, because there's nobody explicit about that. Well, yeah, I mean, the Weight Watchers CEO, Sima Sistani, I'm so sorry if I butchered that, said there are people who join this program and lapse from our program because it didn't work for them. And we have to be honest about that. Yeah, because it doesn't work. Because it's a low-fat diet. That's why. So it doesn't work. And we now know better. And so we should do better. And so they're kind of saying, like, we have to admit that for some people, just regular Weight Watchers doesn't work. So it is. It's a huge admission. It's a huge step for them to be offering these drugs. Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting to push drugs rather than push a adequate diet or a balanced diet. I think that's an interesting choice. But okay, I've told you guys my views. I think Ozempic should be for emergency situations. I think it's good in that sense, and I would never ever judge somebody that's very, very big. But if you're losing 30 pounds and you're taking Ozempic, I am judging you. I am. I will say that flat out. I don't think that that's a good decision. So, it's just crazy. Anyways, okay. I mean, on the one hand, saying we know that our program doesn't work for a lot of people feels liberating. Like, there's a way in which it acknowledges that obesity is a problem completely separate from willpower. Okay. Wrong. That is wrong. Do you guys realize that it does take willpower to eat 5,000 calories a day, too? That's dedication. Okay? So it's not. It's just, what are you putting your willpower towards? Let's be honest about it. If we completely cut out all willpower, your body will maintain its weight. You will not gain weight with zero willpower. That's not true. You're putting will into the power of eating and eating and eating. It's a very, very deliberate choice. Okay? It could be because you're hungry. It could be because of this. It could be because of that. That's fine. But if you're very, 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 very big, it takes a lot of willpower to sustain that. It just does. And I think we need to look at it that way too. It works both ways. So that's completely wrong. Okay. It's a little bit like the change in framework we had with Prozac. Yeah, Prozac is a really good analogy because in this day and age, I don't think people should really shame someone who's like, I have depression and I take Prozac. You wouldn't be like, well, have you just, tried to be happy, or whatever. I think people are too eager to go on drugs, I think because they make money. So I don't know that Prozac is a lifelong solution. That's something that I will say. I think it's good for a crisis situation sometimes in certain situations, but I don't know that it's really, great to do forever. And I have questions about it. I question it. Does that make sense? But I'm not going to like pull the pill out of your hand. Okay. But I don't agree with them in this sense. I don't view those drugs for everybody. Again, there are certain people, of course, that would need something, but I don't view this as like a blanket thing. Like, yeah, well, whatever. You feel a little sad today. I guess you should get on a drug. Like, no. I think there's a place when there's severe trauma, but I just, or of course, other types of drugs for severe mental illness, but I would not be like, everybody should just take Prozac tomorrow, And that's kind of the attitude that they're having with Ozempic. I don't agree with that. I don't think it's a solution for most people. I think it's for very specific people. I'm glad that it's available. I'm glad that in some cases it's saving lives. But I don't think it's a solution for everybody, and I don't think it should be meant for everybody. And I don't think it's a light decision. I think it's a serious decision. Okay? Anyways. But it was more that when Prozac was first introduced, it sort of switched the framework so that you didn't necessarily have to think about psychodynamic therapy and sort of dig deep into your past. You at least had another model which can be treated in this separate chemical way. So there's kind of a bright line between you and it. It just externalizes the situation. Okay. Yeah, I mean, and that's something the new medical director also pointed out to me, which is that like some people are just genetically predisposed to have insulin resistance. No. Nope. That can lead to abnormal fat storage and a dysregulated appetite. No. So this is false. No. That would just mean that maybe for some people, genetically, you don't need as many carbs as somebody else. That's all it means. There is going to be some variation, certainly in macros. Even throughout my weight loss journey, I've had to have different variations of macros at different times of the journey because my body needs different things at different times. So of course, genetically, some people may benefit from eating more fat or less fat or more carbs or less carbs or more protein or less protein. Like, I am a fan of intuitively eating macros but counting calories, right? I think that that's a thing, but you still have to eat all the macros. Even if it's in different amounts, that's fine, but you need to still eat them, So no, this is wrong. Let's say Ozempic-like drugs are widely available. A lot of people start to know people who are taking Ozempic and think about it in this way. Can you imagine a scenario in which that actually changes this underlying lingering bias against fatness? I really hope so. I mean, because once you have a medication that works really well for something like obesity, and everyone kind of acknowledges that if you take this, you will lose a substantial amount of weight very quickly, I do think some of the moralizing around it will go away. Because the problem with diets is that they are very moralistic, like forcing people to eat carrots or whatever instead of what they actually want to be eating. Gosh, this logic is nuts, isn't it? It has like a should and shouldn't quality that is a little like telling people to just be happy. What? No, it would be more like, are you depressed? Are you living in an abusive situation? We need to work to get you out of that. Are you in an abusive relationship? We need to get you out of that. Did you go through a massive breakup? We need you to help you process through that. Did you go through a loss in the family? Maybe you need a drug to help you through the edge of this time just so you can continue to function and continue going to work, but you still need to work through it. And that's kind of how I view it. So I don't view it as you should just be happy, but I do view it as take a drug if you need it in a moment, but definitely there has to be other work involved. And it's the same thing with Ozempic. If you take Ozempic, you still have to diet and exercise. This is wild. Like, this is insane. If you don't eat a proper diet, then you're going to get Ozempic face. You're going to have problems because you will be essentially starving yourself. And so how is this changing the topic of weight for the better? This is not. This is completely unreasonable. This is crazy. Okay. Anyways. I think that, once these become more popularized, hopefully it will lead more people to see obesity as a medical condition, which again, I think is a positive thing. What is a medical condition? Okay, anyways, so that's the positive. The positive is that we move into a world where we have a completely different medical framework for obesity, and it slowly erodes the stigma around being fat. Now, maybe the difficult thing, like one thing I wonder about is if it actually hardens our intolerance of fat if you just won't get with this program. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a real risk of that. To use an example of my own, that's not obesity. I do have anxiety, but I'm not on anti-anxiety medication. But every time I go to the doctor and check anxiety on the form, they're like, Lexapro, here you go. Like, here, why don't you take it? No, seriously, take it. And it doesn't matter how many times I say, like, I want to try other things, like, whatever, I'm meditating. They're like, well, we have a pill. Like, you could just take it. And it's very hard to push back against the medicalization of something. And I do think that there's a potential for that for people who don't want to take it for whatever reason, can't tolerate it. Again, there are side effects. Maybe it doesn't work for them. Maybe insurance doesn't cover it. Maybe they just have other things they want to focus on than losing weight. I think there is a risk that we'll get to be like, well, your biggest problem is obesity, and why don't you just, inject this into yourself already? Yeah, so I think this is already happening. So this is actually very accurate. Right. I mean, and this, what you described about your relationship with doctors and anxiety, it is a discipline for you to maintain a complicated relationship with your anxiety in the same way as I think it might really take a lot of work and be a discipline to maintain a complicated relationship with your body. Yeah, I mean, right now, the obesity doctor, or one of them that I talked to for this, he was saying he does not just like write a prescription for everybody who comes by. You have to be obese, which is like above a certain BMI threshold. So if you were just a little overweight, that's not really going to qualify you. But I think in the future, it might come to a point where these drugs are so widely available that someone who's just overweight, not obese, can get their hands on them and basically use them, probably. Yeah, which I don't even think it's good for everybody who's just obese. I think it's only good for very, very, very large people. Okay. That's my opinion. But anyways. So you will not see as many people who are obese. And so therefore, being a little overweight will start to look maybe a little more conspicuous among your social group or whoever, or whatever else. And that you might start to put some pressure on that endocrinologist to write that prescription already. I think there's the possibility of that happening, but at the same time, obesity is like such a huge medical problem that if we do have a way to get people to not be obese and it's relatively low key and they can tolerate it well and it's like widely available, I have trouble not seeing that as a good thing. Yeah, that was a trip. So I definitely want to know your guys' thoughts. I'm sure that in this video I said certain things that maybe some of you guys didn't agree with, and that's fine. But I also just, I think that this is extremely toxic of a mindset. I think the thought process that they have about Ozempic is insane. I think it's the worst take you could take from it. I think that Ozempic is not a magic pill. You still have to diet and exercise. Um, you can't just take it and starve yourself. That's not okay. Like, you're going to have very bad problems. There are also risks to it, and people need to assess their risk. It is experimental. People need to assess where they're at and make a good decision for them. This is not something that I think should be pushed on every single person. I think that you need to look at it case by case, and you need to realize that this is not just a be all end all. Like, you still have to diet and exercise, because if you don't, you're going to have severe issues. So I don't understand why they're pushing this, other than the fact that, like, this is where the corporate message around body positivity and weight loss drugs combine into one. And I just hope that we can look at these types of things with a bit of skepticism and questions. And I think that that would be for the best for a lot of people, because I don't think it's necessary for most people to do this. I think what's most important is your basics: having a healthy diet, exercising, eating at an appropriate caloric deficit or caloric maintenance if you're of a healthy weight. That's what's really important. And those basics, they're not out of style, they're not off trend, they're not gauche. That's not true. So, yeah, I think ultimately personal accountability is really important in regards to obesity. It's the only thing that can get you through to the end. So, anyways, you guys, thank you guys so much for watching. My long form people will like this. I'm going to go ahead and go. Thank you so much. I will talk to you guys again very soon.